Welcome, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Your business might not be child's play, but ours is, sponsored by Bright Horizons Family Solutions. I hope you enjoyed answering the quiz questions while you were waiting for us to get started, and we're ready to begin. Before we introduce our speakers, I'd like to just go through a few housekeeping details. My name is Laura Avakian. I'm a senior advisor for Bright Horizons and will be serving as the moderator for the webinar today. I want to tell you that the program should last approximately 60 minutes. We hope you will be able to stay with us through that time and that you'll submit questions all during the course of the webinar. You can put them in at any time in the question box that's located on the lower left corner of your screen. Text them in and then click Submit. We will be holding them until the end of the presentations when we'll do a question and answer session. Want to mention also that we will be doing a few live instant polls during the session. We'll ask you to participate and we'll give you some instant feedback from our audience polling. One of the things you might want to do is enlarge the slides if you're having trouble seeing them by clicking on Enlarge Slide button. Also, if you happen to be listening by phone, please make sure that you also follow the link that was in the registration email. By doing that, you'll be able to see the slides as well as listen by phone. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties during the time, just click the Help button and you will get some assistance. At the end of the program, we're going to ask you to do an evaluation that will follow the Q&A. Today's webcast is going to highlight two organizations and their leaders who have successfully transitioned child care center management. I will introduce them in a moment, but let me just show you what else we'll be doing today. Here's the agenda. We're in the introductions now. And in a few minutes, I'll tell you just a bit about Bright Horizons and our experience with transitioning centers. Our first presenter will be a case study from the University of Massachusetts Medical School. We're very pleased that Janet Hirsch will be joining us from there. And then our second case study is from the Monsanto Corporation in St. Louis, and we're delighted that Tracy Ramsey from Monsanto will provide the story about Monsanto. As I say, following that, we'll do a Q&A, evaluate the program, and thank you for your participation. So before we introduce our speakers, just a few words about Bright Horizons. As you know, today is about the transition of centers, and you're going to be hearing about many of our clients who have done that. But you should know that we have a lot of experience in managing child care centers, having managed over 700 in the United States and in other countries. We're very proud to have partnered with almost 80 of the top 100 companies that Working Mother lists as best employers, and in fact all of the top 10. One of the things that Bright Horizons is known for doing well is customizing solutions to fit each of the employer's needs at whatever stage their employees are going through. Let me show you some of our partners. On this slide, you'll see just a representative sample of the organizations that we partner with. You'll notice that there is a variety of size and many types of industries, including more than 50 colleges and universities. Some of you are on the call today, and we're very glad, of course, to have our partners with us. Bright Horizons is known as being the leading provider of employer-sponsored child care. And as I mentioned, we've transitioned many centers. In fact, over 100 child care centers have transitioned to our management. One of the reasons is that we offer the most extensive liability protection in the industry, generally a concern of employers who are considering such programs. We also are very proud that we have very, very high parent satisfaction ratings, and our clients stay with us 99% of the time, which is quite a track record. We are also industry-leading NACI accreditation. One of the reasons that employers like us as well is that we walk the talk. We have 11 times been named to Fortune's 100 Best Companies, and one of those reasons is that our turnover rate in our child care centers is 50% lower than the national average. So as we think about why transition a center and why transition it to Bright Horizons. I think today you'll hear stories about how the transition results in enhanced center programs and environments, the ability to standardize policies and practices across your centers. Comprehensive marketing strategies become developed between Bright Horizons and our partners, and those encourage partnerships with them, not just with the employers, but with the parents and employees of your organization. Parent satisfaction is inevitably increased, and most importantly, we hire, train, and retain the top staff who are going to be running the centers. In a proven transition process, a few of the success factors are ones that we think are there in our transitions. Our clients are satisfied, the staff has stability, and our parents report a high degree of confidence in the quality of the center. Most importantly, perhaps, is that it is a seamless process for the children who are involved. So while these can be complicated and sometimes confusing, we think that there are a number of steps and solutions that this webinar will help you with today if you're considering a transition. Let's start by taking one of our audience polls. If your organization has an on-site child care center, please answer the following: whether you currently manage your own center, or whether your child care center is managed by another child care provider. Please check one or the other. I'll give you a moment to do that. I will remind you, too, to be submitting questions along the way as you have time to do that. We'll come back to the answer on the audience poll. We're having a bit of technical difficulty in getting that response, so we'll report on that as we go forward. Let's move ahead and get to our first presenter. We're delighted to have Janet Hirsch with us. Janet is the Senior Manager of Work Life at the University of Massachusetts Medical School. She has a master's degree from Tulane University and spent 10 years working with a consulting company in Boston specializing in work life. She began the Work Life program herself in 2007 at UMass Medical School, and one of her very first priorities was to help champion the employee's request for an on-site child care center. We're proud to say that new center managed by Bright Horizons opened in August of 2010. Janet, welcome. We're looking forward to your story.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Bright Horizons for inviting me to speak today. I'll start by introducing you just a little bit to the medical school. The medical school is in Worcester, Massachusetts, and along with our clinical partners, we are the largest employer in central Massachusetts. Since 2006, we've ranked in the top 10 in primary care education, according to the U.S. News and World Reports. We are the only public medical school in Massachusetts, and actually we have 3 graduate schools. We have our School of Medicine, but we also have the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences, as well as the Graduate School of Nursing. We have a huge research institution, and we receive more than $250 million per year in research funding. In order to manage all that research funding, we have a total of 7,000 employees. Our research achievements are widespread, and we're really proud of the fact that in addition to a medical school, we have research that has impacted the lives of children and adults in the United States and across the globe. So now I want to tell you about our child care centers and why we chose to transition the management of it, and specifically why we chose to transition it to Bright Horizons. Our child care program has been in existence for 24 years. We've had one version or another, some on-site, some off. We had 2 off-site centers before our new on-site center opened last August, and we now have 1 on-site center on our main campus and 1 off-site center. Both of the centers are utilized by university faculty, staff, and students. However, if there are any empty slots, they're open to the community. There's usually not very many empty slots. Our total capacity is for 130 full-time enrollees, and the children range in age from 6 weeks through pre-K. I mentioned earlier about our research, and our researchers work very long hours and somewhat unpredictable hours. And so although we're not open 24/7, we are open from 6:30 in the morning until 6 at night, and so we can accommodate as many employees as possible. We chose to transition our child care center management for a lot of reasons, and it was a very long, involved process for us. It didn't come easily for us, not because we didn't want to transition, just because so many people were involved in getting to that decision. The people who work at UMass Health Center are not experts in the field of child care, and the centers weren't being run efficiently, and curriculum development, although it was not bad, it wasn't progressing and it wasn't at the level of a national center. So that was the first reason we looked at it. We were basically a mom and pop organization, and our parents were setting the policy for the child care center. So there was a lot of resistance by parents, some of whom had been involved with the center for many years, some of whom were having their third child come up to be in the center, and they wanted the same teachers and they wanted to have the same kind of say in the policy. Some of the teachers had been with the centers for 20 years or more, and they were afraid of losing benefits and seniority. So we formed a child care task force to look at all of the options. When we finally agreed to switch management, we issued an RFP to about 8 different child care organizations. And when we reviewed them, we really felt that only 3 out of the 8 had even the capacity and experience to help transition us from 2 off-site centers to 1 on-site and 1 off. We were so glad that we've chosen Bright Horizons to do that, and there were a host of reasons for that, so I'll just emphasize 2 or 3 of the biggest reasons. Number one, they had an exceptional, and continue to have an exceptional reputation in academia. I attend the College and University Work-Family Association meetings. There's national meetings every year, and whenever I attend them, I consistently had heard firsthand reports about what high quality Bright Horizons provides, and also about the communication between Bright Horizons and the academic health centers or just the universities that I've talked to. About 80% of the people who attend the CUFA meetings use Bright Horizons as their child care provider. The other reason was that Bright Horizons was clearly available to us and responsive in a way that we didn't think other centers would be. There's a regional director to each center, and so she made herself known and available to us from the very beginning. And we needed some guarantees also that Bright Horizons would retain our employees and that they would retain their seniority, and they were able to provide that for us as well. So how was our transition process? It was surprisingly smooth. It was long, but that wasn't due to Bright Horizons. That was due to our own lack of moving forward as quickly as we might have, but it was very smooth. Once we chose Bright Horizons, a really strong partnership was created, and that included both Bright Horizons, UMass Medical School, and the architects who created the new center. The director of our centers, who remained the director of our centers, attended weekly meetings with the construction team and the architects. So her expertise, along with the architects, made a wonderful, beautiful new on-site center that we are extremely proud of. But it wouldn't have happened without the input of the Bright Horizons director, because the architects were good, but they also needed that firsthand experience from a director. So as you might expect, as I mentioned, there were some bumps in the road with some parents, but whenever there were, Bright Horizons was there when we had an issue. And what was so important about that was that we at the medical school, primarily myself, and our clinical partners, which is UMass Memorial Hospital, and Bright Horizons, were all on the same page. So we were giving the same message from all of us to the parents who might have had any issues with not being able to predict policy or set policy anymore. And I think consistency is really important, and it decreases people's anxiety because they're not getting mixed messages. So the communication was wonderful. We had a final deadline of when the center needed to open, and our final deadline was August 1st, and we had left ourselves a week in between because we were closing one center at that time. Bright Horizons took over the management in January of last year, in 2010, and we were opening the new center on August 1st. We went a week past our predicted stoppage of work, and so we were really had no choice but to finish by Monday on August 1st. And so that final weekend, the Bright Horizons staff worked 14-hour days in order to get the center up and running and have a welcoming professional demeanor when the parents came in. They were just great. One last story about the transition is that our director, who had been with us before, was very, very hesitant about this transition. She wasn't all that thrilled about it. She had worked for a large center before, and she didn't like the experience and came to us because we were kind of a mom-and-pop organization. And I was really afraid we might lose her in the transition. I have to tell you quite honestly, she is our biggest cheerleader. I'm not sure what else I can call her except that, a cheerleader for Bright Horizons. She has been so happy with both the professionalism. She has been to at least 2 long-distance conferences that Bright Horizons has sent her to, and her professional development has improved and increased so much in the past year. And I think that that's what's so wonderful about Bright Horizons. One of the nice things, they nurture their staff, and you can't really expect your staff to nurture the children they take care of unless we're nurturing the staff in some way as well. So I think they do a great job at that. So the benefits of our transition to Bright Horizons, the centers are really well run. They give us monthly reports regarding both capacity and how many slots are open or what the waiting list is. They give us financials that are on time and accurate. And I can only say that I'm so relieved to leave the educational and operational aspects of the center to the people who are the experts, because we are not. So I hope that's been helpful.
Oh, Janet, that was just terrific. What a great success story, and congratulations on the opening of your new center.
Thank you.
I want to report to you all, we did get the results of the audience poll of the first question. The question was just asking which of you who are participating have managed your own center, and which of you have your center outsourced to a child care provider. The results are that 62.5% of you are currently managing your own centers, and 37.5% are being managed by a child care provider. My math is right, that's 100%. Now we want to ask you to participate in another audience poll. This one is, what is your biggest challenge with your current child care program? We heard Janet describe a number of hers, and we'd like you to just pick one of these that you see as your current biggest challenge. Is it demand for care in excess of center capacity? Is it liability exposure? The quality of the child care program, unbudgeted expenses, facility in need of upgrade, or program oversight? Please select one, and we will give you the results in just a moment. Also, remember to submit questions when you have time. We'll be looking for those shortly. Thank you. We'll have the results just here in a second. They're coming up now. If any of you has experienced any technical difficulty with putting in your answer, just press the help button. Okay, what we find is that there are 2 that have considerably more, are considered a bigger challenge than others. One is that the demand for care in excess of center capacity, 42.8% of you tell us that that is the biggest challenge that you are facing, which no doubt means some long wait lists for you. The second largest one that was cited is unbudgeted expenses. 33% of you tell us that that is an issue for you. And the last 2 are liability exposure and program oversight, that each came in at 11% as your largest concern. So we will see that some of these are addressed in some of the discussion that's going forward. Let me now turn to our second presenter. We're delighted to have with us Tracy Ramsey. Tracy is the Global Contingent Labor Lead at the Monsanto Company, which is based in St. Louis, Missouri. She's been with Monsanto for 13 years and has had roles in human resources during that time. One of her jobs, in addition to managing the contingent labor force, is her responsibility for the on-site child development center that Bright Horizons operates on their campus. Tracy has a master's degree from Washington University in HR management, and I must mention that she has a particular passion for on-site child care. She has 3 children. Her 2 boys are both graduates of the center there, and her daughter, who is 2 years old, is an attendee right now at the center. So Tracy, with your personal as well as your professional experience about centers, please tell us the Monsanto story.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you for inviting me to talk to the group today. So Monsanto, as Laura mentioned, is based in St. Louis. We are a leader in the field of plant breeding, ag biotech, and genomics, and we're committed to providing our producers with the tools that make them more efficient and maintain their profitability in their farming operations. We also want them to be able to use fewer resources and less overall effect on the environment. So we believe we're making the world a better place by producing more, conserving more, and improving the lives of farmers. We are headquartered in St. Louis. We have approximately 22,000 employees and about 500 locations worldwide in many, many regions. We have about $11.36 billion in annual sales, and you can find our website at www.monsanto.com. A little bit about our child care program. We began in 1997, about 13 years ago. We built a brand new building. It's a standalone on-campus child care center. It is utilized by our employee families. However, as employees either voluntarily or involuntarily leave the company, we don't kick those families out. So we do have some community families that utilize our center because they were an employee at one time or another. We currently service about 150 children. They range from 6 weeks to 6 years of age. And we're a bit unique. When the center was started 13 years ago, we had Bright Horizons as our provider. 5 years later, we transitioned to another provider, and about a year and a half ago, we transitioned back. We have a very nice center. It's very bright. We have large playground areas outside. We have 2 very large common areas inside for the children to play when there's inclement weather. And we are NACE accredited. We're also the first child care facility in the U.S. to be awarded the Voluntary Protection Program, or VPP star status by OSHA. There were some primary things that really made us decide to move back to Bright Horizons. There were some changes in the financial climate here at the company where our senior leadership didn't want to subsidize the program as much as they had in the past, and we needed to become more creative about running a very efficient, very effective program. Our prior provider, there were definitely communication challenges, and we knew about that through parent surveys and complaints that I was receiving as the business owner for the Child Development Center. And then probably the most primary thing was we just felt like there wasn't corporate alignment between the last provider and Monsanto. There were some diversity issues among the staff, and it just took us a long time to solve problems with the prior provider. So we knew that it was time to make a change. We had a very good relationship with Bright Horizons the first time around, and those of us sort of at the helm at that point in time really knew that we needed to make a change. We chose Bright Horizons because of their strong partnership approach, and as I mentioned earlier, Monsanto, some of the things that we really value are diversity or inclusion, which Bright Horizons does as well. They've been named to the Fortune 100 list. They've been named to the Working Mothers list, and those are certainly things that are really important to us. We believe in transparency. We're very results-oriented, and we're about getting things done, and that wasn't happening with the prior provider. Also, our parents, the first time around, had been very, very happy with Bright Horizons, and when the announcement came the first time that we were moving from Bright Horizons to another provider, parents were very, very upset and extremely vocal. We had an event, and we had two cakes. One said, "Goodbye, Bright Horizons," and the other one said, "Welcome to the other provider." Parents were so upset that we were leaving Bright Horizons, they only ate the Bright Horizons cake, which is just sort of a funny situation, but I wanted to share. Our transition process was really focused on a few key things. As I mentioned earlier, communication had been a problem, so we knew that we wanted to have a very stringent communication process. So there were only 4 or 5 of us who started looking at potentially changing providers. We put together presentations and things for our senior leadership, and then on the day of communication in the morning, we informed the prior provider that we were moving away from them. That was quickly followed by notifying the teachers and staff of the change, and then an email went out to the parents. The 4 or 5 of us who were responsible for making the change, we were available at the center on the date of the change and answering questions and helping folks out and communicating that within the next 2 to 3 days there would be informational sessions. Staff retention was key for us. During the 13 years that the center's been open, we have many staff who have been with us that full 13 years. And as a parent, I know that teachers are critical. Usually if the teachers and staff are okay with the decision, then parents will be okay with it too. Because so many times the center is the teachers. That's who parents relate to on a day-to-day basis. And if teachers are okay, usually that settles parents down pretty quickly. In order to retain that staff, we did offer extended benefits for teachers, and then we just ensured that it was a seamless process from start to finish. We also, going back to the poll, we also had a pretty big wait list issue with our prior provider. They said that we had like 220 families on the wait list, and I kept saying that can't be right, that can't be right. And when Bright Horizons came in, that's one thing that they tackled immediately. So they reviewed our wait list, they got it down to, they made contact with every family, and we got it down to a place now where I am absolutely confident it is 100% accurate. We continue to stay in touch with the families that are on the wait list. We can tell families this is about how long it will be till you'll have a spot, and I give full credit to Bright Horizons for that, because I'm certainly not a child care expert, but their knowledge and expertise really, really helped us get on top of that. I think the other thing that we were really looking for, which I mentioned earlier, was some financial impact and some help with that. And I'm really proud to say just a couple of months ago, we needed to cut the budget, and Bright Horizons made 2 suggestions that are going to save us about $70,000 a year. One of them is around changing our kitchen staff and moving from 2 people to 1 person, and we're going to hire a higher level person, which is going to cost us less than the 2 people we had before. And also, we changed the hours of some of the teachers and staff just to make the flow and the efficiency of the center more effective. Parent satisfaction has increased drastically, and we know that because of the surveys that we send out. Monsanto actually sent out their own survey under the prior provider, and we've been able to compare that to the surveys now through Bright Horizons, and that's going extremely well. And as you all know, if parents are happy, everybody's happy. And then just improving the center operations, which I talked about. We have lost very, very few staff, which is really, really important to our operation. And again, that makes the child's experience all the better if they can have the same teacher and it's someone that they've gotten used to being with on a daily basis. And then again, so important is just the alignment with our corporate culture. So when we get together in a room with Bright Horizons to solve a problem, it goes very, very quickly because we tend to have the same morals and values, and what Monsanto thinks is important aligns very closely with Bright Horizons, and that has just helped immensely in getting things done.
Tracy, thank you so much. Another compelling story, and congratulations on a successful transition. What a lot of detail and really, really well done. Let's take another audience poll. This one has to do with the priorities that you might have as participants if you were changing the management of your child care center. In this case, you can check all that apply. One is continuity of current curriculum and program features. Another is retaining current child care center staff. Another, parent confidence and satisfaction. And fourth, predictability of operating and financial performance. Which are your priorities? We'll give you a moment to answer. And if you have answered that, please remember to think about submitting your questions. They are coming in, and we are recording those as they have been registered. We are getting the results. Just calculating the percentages so I can see them here. Thank you. What we find is that the very largest priority, as you can see from most of you, 87.5% of you report that the predictability of operating and financial performance would be the most significant priority in making a change. Half of you, 50%, said that parent confidence and satisfaction would be a priority. Next, retaining current center staff, almost a third of you, 32.5%, and the continuity of the current curriculum and program features, 12.5%. Thank you for those answers. Before we go to the Q&A, I would just like to summarize some of the key points that we've heard from Janet and Tracy. What we know is that each center does have its own reasons for making a change in management. For the University of Massachusetts Medical School, their center had been self-operated for many years. They wanted to move to a circumstance where they would have child care expertise at the head of the center, enhance the training and development of their staff, have a more robust curriculum, and as with Tracy, improve the financial efficiency. They also felt it was important to have good communications and a transparent, inclusive process, and I think Janet's story demonstrated that they certainly did that. In the case of Monsanto, they had had their center managed by a third party, but they were not happy with the way things were going. There were problems with communication and parent satisfaction. So they transitioned to Bright Horizons to address operational issues, get a better cultural fit with of the center and the management, and as you've heard too, again, improving financial efficiency was part of their motivation. They have demonstrated that they've had positive results in all of those areas that they sought to improve. On a personal level, before I became the senior advisor to Bright Horizons, I also participated in two different kinds of center transitions, and I mention them just to point out that there can be very different motivations for doing this. In one case, I was the VP of HR for a medical center in Boston that merged with another one. As it turned out, we both had Bright Horizons managed centers, and we were only a few blocks apart. However, the transition had complications. We had different subsidies. We had different methods for managing a wait list, and we had two different directors. So in approaching the merger, we really wanted to make it seamless and a positive experience for all the parents. And Bright Horizons stepped in, well, they were already there, but stepped up to the challenge of really helping us create a single culture and a singly managed center very successfely. Then later, when I was at MIT, we had another challenge. We had two very small self-operated centers on the campus, but that were liked very much by the parents who used them. The university decided to build a large center because we just simply had way more demand than capacity, and built a beautiful new center right in the heart of campus. It was our goal then to make sure that we had uniform quality through all of these centers, that we did have consistent policies and programs, and the quality, very important in an educational institution, as you can imagine. We went from self-op to having Bright Horizons come in and manage the centers, which they are doing today quite successfully. So the conclusion of this is really that each transition brings its own unique challenges, its own questions, its own timetable. Each starts with pre-existing conditions of teachers and staff and facilities and parents who are already involved. So the unique needs of the centers need to be managed. But we also know that there are a number of things that they have in common. And having managed over 100 transitions, Bright Horizons has identified those common elements relative to communication, to involving parents, to handling all of those issues that are common to all transitions, as well as the unique ones. So it's something that we've just had quite a bit of experience with, and would welcome, of course, your contacting us if you have questions about how it might affect your center. If you have submitted questions, let's turn to some of those now. Here is one that has come in from Barbara. Thank you, Barbara, for submitting this. She asks, what have been the greatest advantages of transitioning management of your child care center to Bright Horizons? I'm going to address this to both Tracy and then to Janet. Tracy first.
So for Monsanto, I think the greatest advantages have been the innovative thinking that Bright Horizons has brought. So no matter what problem I take to them, they take it very seriously. They're very quick to respond. They're very proactive about helping us run our center better. And one thing that I hear from senior management is we're not child care experts. We're not in the child care field. And so I really look to Bright Horizons to help lead me in terms of what are the best practices, how do we get cutting edge child care in our facility. And, I think we have over 100 families on our wait list, and I think that's just a testament to how well we've done. It certainly helps us from a recruitment and retention standpoint in terms of making sure that we're able to get the best researchers that we can find out there, and then most importantly that we're able to retain them.
Thanks very much. Janet, what would you see as the advantages?
I think there are several. The biggest ones are we have much more predictability around the financial concerns that we had before and how the financials are going, so that when we get our monthly reports, there are no huge surprises in store for us because we've been in contact with Bright Horizons previously around how the capacity is going, how many are on the waiting list, things like that. Before, we were really fluctuating up and down, and we couldn't really predict what the finances were going to look like every month. So there's much more of that, which is extremely helpful both to all of us and to the leadership of the medical school as well. The other most important thing is the improved curriculum. We had parents who cared a lot, but they were setting policy, and they also had a big hand in what the curriculum would look like. And I think that although some parents are experts in child development, not all are. And so now we are working with Bright Horizons, who are national leaders in development of child of child care curriculum. And so that has been a tremendous plus for the organization.
Great. Thank you so much. Let's take our second question. This comes from Gail. Gail asks, if we were to make a change to Bright Horizons, would our center employees stay on? And if so, whom would they work for? I will answer that one. Gail, as you can imagine, the continuity of care is not only, I think, your concern, but it would be Bright Horizons' number one concern also during a center transition. It's important that the children continue to be with the teachers whom they've come to love and trust. And typically, unless we are directed otherwise by the client, Bright Horizons extends job offers to teachers. And in that transition, the teachers become employees of Bright Horizons. Thanks. Now, here's a question from Jennifer. Jennifer, you ask, what advice would you give to me to help make the case internally to transition our center management? I'm going to throw this one to Janet first and then to Tracy.
At the risk of sounding competitive, I'll go back again to financial performance, because I think for our leadership, that's what was most important. I think in many businesses, although they certainly care about the children and what they're learning and how they're cared about, they also need to make the argument for better or at least improved financial performance, and that will change and improve if we're to change leadership of the child care center. And so with Bright Horizons' help, we were able to show how that would improve over I think it was a 3-year period we did the predictions. And they were very impressed by that, and it has proven to be true, so now they're even more impressed.
Thank you so much. Hold on, I'm just looking for the next question. I'm sorry, did we get Tracy a chance to answer?
I would agree. I think the one thing that gets most senior leadership attention is finances and what do the numbers look like. So I think if you can show how you can improve the financial performance by moving to an outsourced provider, that's probably your best bet. And then the other thing is we used a lot of parent survey data. So if there are ways to show that parents may not be completely happy and maybe get from Bright Horizons some ideas of how they would improve upon that, I think that's another good thing to touch on.
Okay, excellent, great. Here is a question that's come in to you, Janet, directed to you from Dennis. He asks, what was the purpose for creating a new center instead of using your current facility?
Oh, great question, Dennis. We had employees and particularly faculty, but also staff who wanted an on-site child care center. Our centers, about 12 years ago, we had an on-site center for several years, and then that building was so old we couldn't use it anymore. So more recently, we have had 2 off-site centers, and the employees were really clamoring for an on-site center. They said that they needed that the researchers certainly needed that so that they could run back and forth to the center when they had such terribly long and unpredictable hours. And so that was the impetus to closing one and opening a new one.
Great, thank you. And we know your new one is beautiful. We've had a couple of questions come in on the communication front. Here's one that came in from Susan. She asks, what formats did you use to communicate the center transitioning to parents? And at what point did you bring the parents into the loop? Tracy, do you want to take that one first, and then we'll also ask Janet?
Sure. We have a very large campus here at Monsanto, so it was really important that the first communication to parents be via email, just so that everybody was getting the message at the exact same time. So we first communicated by email to all parents, and then we followed up over the next 2 days with informational sessions. Somebody from Monsanto talked first about We included in the email why the decision was made. And then in the informational sessions, we talked more about why the decision was made, and we answered questions, and then we allowed someone from Bright Horizons to talk about the curriculum, and that was just a good opportunity for those parents to get to know Bright Horizons. And we talked about how we were going to change communications, and then we certainly followed through on that. So during the first 90 days after the transition, we sent a weekly communication to parents about what was happening, about what was being expected, how teachers and staff were doing. So we really upped the ante on the communications, especially during the transition period. And we also gave parents an opportunity or some names of people that they could come to within the company if they had questions or concerns during that period.
Thanks very much. Janet?
We were in a little bit different position in that we had no outside provider that we had to kind of keep quiet the process from. So we had a parent survey in the beginning, and then because our parents were so involved with the entire process around voting to whether or not to outsource, once we had made the decision, on the one day we told the employees in the morning, and then when parents came to pick up their children, they got letters at that time as well as emails to every house so that we were sure that everybody got the same message on the same day. Once we opened, we then had a parents, not once we opened, I'm sorry, but once we transitioned, which was last January, we had a parents' night within the first week. We also had, because we were opening the new center, we had an open house for the entire week before it opened. Even though we weren't quite ready to open, it was finished enough that we could have parents come and tour and meet the teachers. So I think that allayed a lot of people's anxiety. And then we continued with our parent night for a couple weeks, and then now we've gone to once a month.
That's great. Thank you. I will just add that I think it's so important to stress how vital the good communications are. It's just very important that center staff be included early. You want to allay teachers' concerns because, as Tracy pointed out, when the teachers are satisfied, then the parents tend to be satisfied and the children are. So the communication is absolutely key. We have a question that has come in from Bob. Bob asks, how long does a transition typically take? I can tell you from the Bright Horizons perspective, we usually look at 30 to 60 days to finalize administrative details and make sure that a detailed communication plan is developed that really addresses all the interested parties, staff, parents, administrators, and so on. There have been some critical situations where I can say we have transitioned even in just a few days. But in general, we try to craft a time frame with the employer that works for each individual organization, and that's often different. I would just ask Janet, how long did it take you to transition your center? And then we'll ask Tracy.
It took us too long. So one of my pieces of advice for people was it really took us, because we wanted a transparent process and because we wanted parent input, we had our task force going for about 9 months until the transition started. And although I include that as part of the transition, even though we weren't officially using Bright Horizons yet, that was still part of the transition process, and it went on for too long. Once we actually partnered with Bright Horizons, the transition happened about 3 months later.
Thanks very much. Tracy?
Our decision in terms of looking at the other provider and knowing that we weren't happy with them, I mean, we communicated that on multiple occasions, so I don't think it was a surprise when we actually terminated the contract. But I would say we were sort of looking at that prior arrangement and questioning it for 3 to 6 months. And then once we made the decision to move to Bright Horizons, the transition went pretty quickly. I believe it was about 60 to 90 days.
Great. Thank you so much. I just want to mention before I address the next question that we have actually been flooded with questions. If we don't get to all of them in the time that we have this afternoon, we are going to provide answers in the Q&A transcript that will follow or individually to those who have submitted them. Let me turn now to a question from Marie. She directs it to Tracy. Tracy, she wondered why Monsanto transitioned away from Bright Horizons originally before you transitioned back. Tracy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I was not involved 5 years ago, or it's been 6 now, I guess, when we transitioned away from Bright Horizons. But as I understand and as I look back in the files, I think a lot of it was about perceived cost, and I think the management team at that time was focused on the management fee that Bright Horizons was charging. And so they decided to go with another provider who was just charging less in management fee. But trust me in saying you get what you pay for. So it's all about quality. And I think we quickly learned, or that team quickly learned when they changed, how important it is to work with a provider who has corporate experience, because running community centers is a lot different than running corporate centers. And that became very evident with our other provider. Our other provider had worked with very few corporate centers, and it was just very evident. And so don't underestimate the difference between community centers and corporate centers, because the communication channels are a lot different. The way you report things is a lot different, and what's important is much different as well.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the story. We have a question from Julie. She asks if we should transition our center, how will we know that our center will continue to be ours and not only a Bright Horizons center? I would just start by saying that there really is no such thing as a Bright Horizons center per se, in the sense that we just don't have a cookie-cutter approach to center management. Each client is unique and usually wants their own culture incorporated in the child care center, and I believe Bright Horizons does that extremely well. I know that when we put our centers under Bright Horizons management at MIT, we felt it was very important to keep the name MIT Children's Technology Center, and that's certainly what it continues to be called. Tracy and Janet, just quickly, starting with Tracy, what did you do about keeping the culture your own?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So our center, when it started 13 years ago, was named the Monsanto Child Development Center. We developed a logo for it. The sign out in front clearly displays that logo. And we continue to use that logo on all of our communications and letterhead and other things that we send out. So that logo that was developed 13 years ago, regardless of who the provider is, I think has really kept that identity very constant.
That's great. Tracy? Excuse me, Janet?
It was important to us also to retain our name. We're called the UMass Medical Center Child Care Centers, and we have a very big sign on Major Street that runs in front of the medical school that goes all the way through the center of Worcester. And it was very important for us to be known as the Medical School Child Care Center. We want people in the area to see us as an employer of choice. And that has stayed. We do have a smaller Bright Horizons sign on our door as people go in so that they know that it is operated by Bright Horizons if they're coming for a tour or something, but it's definitely our own identity.
I think that culture we know matters a lot. I'm going to move to our last question. I believe our time's just about up, but before I do, I just want to mention to all of you that we're going to be surveying you right now about the program. So please take a minute before you sign off to answer the survey questions. But here is our last question. This one comes in from Mark. Mark, what tips would you ask to Janet, and then we'll ask Tracy to answer this too. Are there specific tips that you would give someone who's considering transitioning the management of their child care center? What would they pay attention to most?
Well, I think that really what you need to pay attention to is to think about what your goals and your priorities are and what is most important to you as an organization. What do you need the most? So you can get people who are experts in all sorts of things. We needed someone with both the experience and the infrastructure to support our child care centers. We needed someone with the experience of closing one center and opening another while remaining in touch and communicating with us so that our culture would be considered and the kind of input that parents expected to hear from Bright Horizons. So again, to know what you're looking for the most and then see who fits that need would really be the most important thing.
And for me, this is Tracy, I would say the power of communication. Just don't forget that, whether it's verbal communication or it's written communication. I just think you can't communicate enough, especially with very busy working professionals. Communication is key. And then the second thing I would say is don't be afraid to make changes. Some of the best things that we've done in the center over the last 13 years have been recommendations of Bright Horizons, and we're just thrilled that we've done them because they've made a big difference financially. They've made a big difference in the quality of care that we're able to offer, and they've really helped us to be seen as the child care provider of choice for people who work here. Everybody wants in.
Thank you so much. Janet and Tracy, your stories are wonderful, and your candor has been terrific. I just want to thank you so much, as well as our participants who've joined in and who've asked us questions for today's program. I think it just offered an awful lot of useful information, and certainly we'd be very glad to continue the dialogue with any of you who have more questions about it. A reminder that there will be a PDF of the webinar slides and a video of the full webinar that should be available within about 24 hours from now. Thank you also for evaluating the program and for taking the time to have such a thoughtful and enjoyable webinar. Best wishes to you all.